We have no idea as of right now at the time of
Allen is playing.
I know, but we have no idea who the Heat will face in the first round, whether it's the Cavs or the Hawks. But we're going to preview this series anyway. Now, the Miami Heat, their fan base has come after us on multiple occasions because we said they have started to implode. And luckily for them and their fan base, they got blessed with the first seed in a very easy path to the Eastern Conference Finals. So, for one, the question I have, are you still not sold on the Heat? And the other question is, what do you envision happening if they face the Cavs or Hawks?
The Hawks is an intriguing matchup for me because I feel like they can make this series competitive. I think
Hawks more so than the Cavaliers.
I do believe so because I think Atlanta has a little bit more experience than the Cavs, and I feel like experience really does matter in the playoffs, especially for young guys. And I also think they have a guy. I think Trae Young far exceeds Garland at this point right now, and he's shown the ability that he can just turn up on any moment. And then when he does, Atlanta gets it going, and then at home they get dangerous. Sometimes their shooters just start hitting. Then it gets dangerous. But I think Atlanta would be a much more entertaining matchup for viewership purposes. But I do think Heat beat either team in 6 games, 5 games, I think regardless. The Heat's defensively, they're just too good right now at the moment. You got one of the best defensive fives in the league in Miami.
100%.
Offensively, I don't think they need to be elite to beat either of these teams because defensively, I think they'll be able to hold their own. I'm just going to be interested to see a lot of the young guys in this matchup. Garland, Tyler Hero, DeAndre Hunter, Evan Mobley. Like, this is what I'm really interested in. How are these young guys going to produce in their first or second matchups? Not really acknowledging him. But I'm really interested to see that. So for me, Heat in 5 or 6, whoever they play doesn't really matter to me.
You got to pick one, bro. Heat in 5 or Heat in 6?
Well, it depends on where they play. All right, so if Heat play the Hawks, Heat in 6. If they play the Cavs, Heat in 5.
Ooh. And the Cavs just gave the Nets a really great game. And I don't know where you're leaning, Celtics and Nets.
Oh, you'll find out.
And now that Allen's playing, I really don't know if Atlanta's going to beat
Allen hasn't played in like 2 months.
I'm not saying that
the Hawks have beat the Cavs 3-1 this year.
The Hawks are
with
a solid team. No, I understand.
Like even with Jared Allen,
let me say this before we continue on. This is for the fans and for you guys. I don't care nothing about the regular season anymore. Like, throw it out the window for me.
Because the Hawks and the Knicks had a similar record.
I don't. Regular season doesn't matter. It doesn't move me anymore. It doesn't shake me. We are in a new era of basketball. We are in a new stage. This is playoff intensity.
No doubt.
So for me, the Cavs, the Heat, the Hawks, pardon me, will give the Heat more of a run because of their experience, because of Trae Young, and he can turn up at any moment. It's still a wait and see on Garland. It's still a wait and see on Mobley. Jared Allen, I kind of understand that defense is still going to be there. So for me, that's how it goes.
Okay, so the Cavs are 1-2 against the Hawks when Allen plays.
I think it's going to be a great game tonight. I think that I mentioned last show that Trae Young can get into one of those zones and he could backpack the team and get them past any team. He just has those type of capabilities, especially in a one-game playoff. So I think tonight's going to be a dogfight. I do believe that with Allen coming back, that's going to clean up some defensive things, give them a little bit of some kind of spark in the interior with offense. I do think that I do have the Cavaliers winning this game. I think Garland's going to show out. I think that with Allen's return, it's going to be tough for them to get in the paint, even though that's not really the Hawks' game. But regardless of that fact, I think that the defensive presence is going to be too strong for Atlanta. I think the Cavaliers do get past them. But I'm going to keep this preview as if it's a 50-50 chance, and I'll give it my perspective for both series if need be. So I do have the Heat winning regardless. I have the Heat winning in 5 games. I think that the Heat need to put an exclamation point on this series, whether it be 4 games or 5 games. If it goes 6, it's going to allow people like us who have been very critical, especially me, throughout the entire season. I've been very critical of, I don't know if they have the offensive firepower to be a true contender for the championship. Defensively, you're 100% right, Riv. They have one of the best starting 5s on the defensive side of the ball in the NBA, but I do have my reservations about their offense. But that should not be an issue against neither the Cavaliers nor the Hawks. I think that so long as Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo play their game, you still have Kyle Lowry providing any type of input towards this game, I think that they will be more than fine and more than capable to get by them, because these two teams, where Trae Young, yes, he's amazing. He could get a game. You have Garland, who just can have one of those performances, not on the level of Trae Young by any means, but Garland has shown against the Nets that he can put a team on his back and keep them in a game, but still unfortunately not be able to get it done. I think that regardless of how you shake it, the Heat win a series in 5 games. I give both these teams the respect of giving them one game because they show that they could be in a game with any team, given the fact that against the Nets, who people are considering contenders, the Cavs really gave them a run for their money on the Nets' home floor, and the Hawks still have Trae Young. And Trae Young, like I said, is capable of getting one. We saw Tatum last year against the Nets' big three get one by dropping an unbelievable 50-point performance. Trae Young is capable of having a performance like that and getting the Hawks one game, but it won't ultimately matter in the end. I have the Heat in 5.
Those is crispy.
The Hawks will beat the Cavs in the play-in tonight. And I'm going to be happy when they do. Watching a Heat and Cavs series is not something I'm looking forward to. It's going to be
You got a vendetta against the Cavs.
It's going to be a very ugly offensive series. Yeah. Very high-intense defense.
Agreed.
The Heat would sweep them. I think it's not even... Like, the Cavs beat them twice this season, but both times have been without Jimmy Butler. I don't think the Cavs have enough offense to beat any team in the playoffs. Like, in a series or whatever, like, they just are too limited offensively.
Agreed.
That I just don't have faith in them. The Hawks are intriguing. This is the same core that went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. This is the same exact team. Trae Young, there's something about him when he faces the Miami Heat. He has a vendetta against them. It all started back last year in overtime versus Jimmy Butler.
Facts.
They talked a lot of trash.
Facts.
There is a rivalry there, and that's what I want to see in the playoffs. The Hawks have beat the Heat multiple times this season. It's not a good matchup for the Heat because they have a lot of offensive firepower. They pick apart Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Max Strus. Those are defensive liabilities for the Heat. That series is going to be highly competitive. It's going to go to 6 if they face the Hawks. I was low on the Heat. I've been low on them. I don't view them as contenders. I don't think they'll win the championship. But that's not me saying that they won't get out the first round. Because ultimately, the Miami Heat are going to make the Eastern Conference Finals. It's as simple as that. The road they have is easy.
Super easy.
They're going to face the Hawks or Cavs. They're going to beat them. Next series, they're facing Philadelphia. Do I trust James Harden? I don't. Do I trust Philly to even get out the Toronto series?
I mean,
I'm not sure. And versus Toronto, I think the Heat should definitely win that series.
If Philly gets out Toronto, I feel like they're fully prepared to play Miami. Like, if they get out of Toronto and they beat Toronto,
I agree.
I feel like they are fully mentally, physically prepared to play Miami. Because I feel like Toronto defensively is just as aggressive and just as gritty as Miami. So that would be a tough one, though.
Miami's better defensively.
No, yeah, they're better. But I think that, in terms of like physicality, aggressiveness, I think they're just as good as Miami. I think at Toronto's best defensively, they can be just as good as Miami, especially their 5.
I mean, but we'll get into the Toronto Sixers series later, but just spoiler alert, don't give me your winner. Just give me how many games that series goes.
Toronto Sixers.
Toronto Sixers? Damn. 6 games.
Okay. So 6 games, either way, Philly or Toronto, that's a dogfight of a series. That's a highly competitive series.
I don't think it's one blowout.
So you're talking about, let's say Philly wins that series. They get out of it, highly competitive. Harden's already dealing with his little, nicks and knacks and injuries. I don't really trust that against Miami. Like, I think Miami has a very easy path to the conference finals.
Jimmy Butler has also been battling with injuries all season too.
Yeah. I just think the Heat are in perfect position to go to the Eastern Conference Finals. The Hawks would be the most competitive first-round series. The Heat, to me, are one of the weaker first seeds that I've seen in recent memory. I don't think they're a very strong team, but because they have an easy path, they're going to get to the conference finals.
Who's weaker, them or Philadelphia?
How was that week, though? Atlanta and then Philly. How was that a weak Eastern Conference path?
That is a weak Eastern Conference path.
How so, though?
Well, look at last year with Philadelphia, right? You had Washington and then you had Atlanta. That was supposed to be a breeze. Similarly here, I agree with what you're saying. You have Atlanta, who's still a gritty team, same team as last season, who showed that they could go to the Eastern Conference Finals with this core. You still got to give them that respect. And then you have Philadelphia, who has James Harden, Joel Embiid. either way you shake it, that's still one of the better duos, regardless of how Harden's been playing. You still got to give him that respect.
The Sixers don't play well against great teams. They beat Miami already this year, but Miami's more prepared to play them and beat them, and in my opinion. One thing I'll say about the Heat, things are starting to click for them. Victor Oladipo, last 4 games averaging 19 points per game. We've been talking about it all year long. He's their X factor. Like, if he can play at a very high level, now you can have a potential 5-man lineup of Jimmy, Kyle Lowry, Oladipo, Bam, PJ, and you don't drop off defensively anywhere. And I think that's huge for them. They're the best three-point shooting team in the NBA percentage-wise. They're one of the best defenses still. There's a lot of things going for Miami. I think this path makes it much easier for them because they probably don't have to exert that much energy going to the conference finals.
I agree.
Like, it's not like the Nets or Celtics path. Whoever Celtics and Nets is going to be a tough series. One of them has to go and face Milwaukee. The Heat don't have to face a team like that, which is why I think
it's
they have
very
a fairly
similar
easy
to last
path.
season. Super similar to last season. Where it's written in the stars for the Heat to go to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's the projection.
I don't think
right
it's
now.
written in the stars.
I know. I agree. I agree wholeheartedly.
So you see Philadelphia or Toronto beating them?
Not Toronto. Nah, not Toronto. I think Philly can beat them though.
I just don't see how you can look at the Heat's path and be like, they're Eastern Conference Finals locks.
Because you still got to give Philly that respect. And I don't disagree.
Atlanta I think Atlanta. They're not going to come out of this and say like this was a dog fight. This is a tough series. It's going to be win, but it's going to be a tough series. And then Philly, that's still a tough ass series. They can still lose that series, bro.
It's facts.
Like, they can still lose that series. I mean, you're looking at, we can go and get to that when if it eventually happens, but the matchup's just like, Embiid is still Embiid. Harden, he's been struggling. Yes, I agree. He's been shaky. He's still James Harden. You got to have some type of respect. I mean, you could say that, but who is Jimmy Butler really in the playoffs? Who is Jimmy Butler?
I don't totally disagree with you, but
I think that's still a tough shit. You can't just fully say Miami's going to the
problem with the Sixers to me. Well, we'll talk about.
He's saying conference.
We'll talk about it later. But I have my reservations about Philly. I think that they're valid, and that's why I think
I'm with you.
I think the Heat have a fairly easy road to the conference.
I wouldn't say easy. That's just a little disrespectful.